Hello, and welcome to Four Little Bears. Today let's make a patchwork scrap buster with our MegaStashBuster2. So I had a bunch of scraps left over. Some were large scraps, some were 6x6 papers that I just wanted to use up. And I decided this would be a great way to end up with patchwork quilt style cards to basically make up my own 12x12 papers from the scraps that I had. I think these turned out really cute. So to start with, I'll just put down a piece of 12x12 so I can kind of lay out the pieces that I want. And like I said, I had a bunch of 6x6 papers. Unfortunately with these, I have found that sometimes Echo Park papers do not give you a full 6x6 sheet. When you cut it off, you can kind of see there those little holes where you can hang it up. Actually cut into the 6x6. They are not true 6x6 papers, which is kind of annoying. So I'm kind of trying to strategically place those little holes in places where I can cover them up later. Thinking about kind of where I want to put these. If you've got 6x6 papers that are true 6x6, it won't be a problem. Just put 4 together and you've got a 12x12. So when you do this, you just need to make sure, because you are going to be cutting up these papers, you want to make sure you get tape all the way along the seams. That way, no matter where you cut it, your papers are going to stick together the way they should. And I'm just using regular masking tape here. You can probably use washi tape, anything that kind of you have on hand. I also had these offcuts of larger 12x12 sheets that I needed a 6" by 12" piece cut off. So what these are basically 2 pieces of 6x12 that I'm going to put together. Also Echo Park. And if you go with the same collection or a family of collections, this is actually, I think, 2 or 3 different Echo Park collections, but they go really nicely together. But yeah, as long as you're using the same collection or type of collection, it's automatically going to go nicely with each other. And then I did pull from my scrap bin some pieces in later that bring out the color palette and just kind of go with it. But this would be a great way to use up your 6x6 paper pads too, because it would use up 4 basically per 12x12. And again, I'll just line them up and tack them in place before I fully put down a piece of tape, like I said, that goes completely along the seam line. That way we can make sure that there's no gaps, that there's no falling apart when you cut it out. This next one I'm doing is a true scrap sheet. It is just small scraps that I had left on hand, strips that I had left. I'm just kind of arranging these here. I'm not really paying too much attention to the cuts that's going to happen later. You could, if you wanted to strategically place these, but I kind of like the fact that it sort of ends up being a mystery by the time you get these all cut and flipped around. You don't really know what's going to go together, and that's kind of fun. You know it's all going to go together because the patterns and the colors all match, so it's going to go together without being matchy-matchy, and that's kind of fun. So you can see I'm just kind of laying it out. I'll change my mind here and fix that layout a different way. Mostly just that the papers fit better on there. And again, on this one, you're going to use a lot of tape because you want to tape up all of those seams. So yeah, once you get it laid out the way you want, just flip it upside down and start tacking and taping. Just be careful, make sure your seams are as close together as they can be without any gaps. You can overlap them if you need to make sure there's no gaps. But I didn't. I butted these right up against each other. And just put the masking tape along all the lines. Now that I have all my pieces done, I'm just going to decide which piece I want for which cuts. And again, I'm not really going to put a lot of thought behind it because I like the idea of this being kind of mystery cuts. Alright, I'll slow this back down to normal speed so you can cut along with me if you want to. This is my designer paper 1. And I'm going to start with cutting the green line. And actually I noticed on this one that I can actually cut 4 inches all the way across here. So I'll just start cutting at 4. So I'll actually cut the green line first, which is at 8. meaning there's 4 left over. And then again at 4. And that's going to give me the 3 main strips. Alright, so next I'm going to work with those top 2 sections, so I'll just grab the 2 side pieces and cut that down to 5 1/4 on the long side. And I'm doing this 2 at a time because my trimmer can handle that. And then again, since these are the top 2 pieces, I'm going to go ahead and cut these at their angle, making sure that I go from the bottom left to the top right. And all I do is I line up the corners on my trimmer, try to get them together nicely, and then line up the corners on my trimmer, and then slide the trimmer blade up and down. It's better if you go to the center and sink the blade, and then go down and then up or up and down. And these are going to all be pieces for card number 4. So next I'm going to deal with the bottom left-hand section for 6, A, B, and A. And I'll come here first, and I'll cut off 1.5 inches from the bottom. And that'll be piece 6A. And then I just need to split this in half at 2 inches. And those are my 6A and B pieces. So I'm going to do my 1.5 inch pieces, or piece, and then I'll go ahead and do my 2 inch pieces. And then that little piece right there is just extra. So on those 2 inch center pieces, the 2x4 pieces, I need to cut those and split those at an angle. And again, just go from the bottom left to the top right. Sink the blade and go up and down. And when I say sink the blade, I mean push the blade in until you feel it go into the little guide, and then up and down. Alright, and then all I have left is the easy section. Splitting up that 4 inch by 12 inch piece into 4 by 3 inch slices. So I'll just put that in the long ways and start slicing at 3 inches. And those are all pieces for card 1. So this Mega Stash Buster, if you've made it before, you will understand the way these are labeled. It makes sets of cards. So it makes at least 4 cards of each set. That's why you have 1 A, B, C, D. And I've labeled them A, B, C, D. However, as you'll see, I just put all the ones into a bag, and when I'm ready to put them together, I'll decide then how I want them to go together. I don't stick with A, B, C, D. You can if you wanted to, but I kind of just put them all together, and then when I lay them out, decide how I want it to go together. So yeah, here, just go ahead and start bagging up pieces. You've got pieces on this sheet for 1, 4, and 6. So those are the bags you'll need to put things into. You could also use envelopes. I just find the clear bags are easier to see what I'm doing. Fair warning, I'm going to make a mistake on this page. But hey, that's what's good about the patchwork cards. I can just make a new patchwork. Here I'm just squaring up my corners on these 6x6 pieces. I apparently didn't have them quite square enough. Alright, so this is going to be designer paper 2, which is the lilac color. And on this one again, I'll cut it at 8 inches first. And then I'll go ahead and cut that easier section right there. So I'll just start cutting at 1 3/4 by 4. Starting with the bottom just because it's the easier cuts. And then these are probably the most difficult cuts of the whole thing, but don't be afraid of 8s. They're not that bad. I'm just measuring it to double check that I have it the right way up. I just cut off my little sliver first, and that little sliver is, I'm going to cut it at 3 7/8, so that little sliver comes off. Then I'll cut off my 1-inch slice. And I'm going to attempt to line these up. Sometimes it's easier to not do it this way and to do it twice. So then on these cuts, they're going to be 1 5/8, and that's just 1 tick if you have an 1/8 inch trimmer, or 2 if you have a 16th inch trimmer past a half. So that's just 1/8 past a half inch is 5/8. And then 7/8 is just 1/8 shy of the next number up, so it's 1 inch shy of 3 inches and 2 7/8. I'm going to go ahead and put these little pieces into the bag so I don't get confused as to where they go. So those pieces all go into one. And then the little finicky 8th pieces are all part of 3. And then again, I can slice this one back down at 4 inches long ways. Be careful because you can't do this to all of the pieces, but this one you can. And then for my angled pieces, I'll do those at one time again. So I'll cut those at 5 1/4. Line those pieces up where the points are on the trimmer blade track and sink the blade and go down and up. Alright, see how I get confused? I'm pointing to the pink piece. This one's fine because it is the same cuts. But bear in mind, I am confused here. I am now following the pink set instead of the purple or the lavender. So in the future, and what I do from here on out is I fold the paper in half so that I can't see the one I've already cut, so that I do not get confused, because I will get confused. I highly recommend folding the paper in half so that you only see one cut at a time. Like I said, those cuts didn't matter. It's these next ones that are going to get confusing. Because I don't need to cut that piece again, but I do. So don't follow this part. Do your 1/8 of an inch cuts again. Whoop. I think here's where I realize I just did something wrong. Yep. There, that's what I should be doing. So if you've made your cuts correctly, you're basically going to cut those 1/8 of an inch the same way you did the top right-hand corner. I'm going to have to do some finagling to make sure I have the right size pieces. So that one is correct at the bottom. But then for my 2 7/8 by 1 5/8 and my 1 inch by 1 5/8 pieces, I'm going to need to get creative here. And so I'll end up with a piece of paper that's just pure scrap, which ends up working fine, because when you are doing it this patchwork style, it's not necessary to have the exact same paper, so it kind of works out well. need one more, but this one's going to be too small, so here's where I put my scrap. Oh, maybe not. Maybe this one's good. Here's where I have to pull in the scraps. So again, this is just a scrap piece left over from when I was making a different project. I'm just going to pull this in because it matches the colors. Again, I just put all my pieces for each card set in the same bag. That way when I'm going through it later, I can decide how I want to lay everything out. So this sheet had pieces for cards 4, 3, 6, and 1. So moving on to designer paper 3. Again, start with the green line, and you can see how I've hidden the bluish side so that I don't accidentally use that. And I'm following the green line here to make my first cut at 4. Then for this one, you can't cut it all the way down at 4. So you're going to need to cut off that bottom section first. So you'll cut it off at 10.5. And that leaves your strip for the bottom. So then that 10.5-inch piece, you can cut that at 5.25. And then those two, you can cut at 4. So anything that's part of the triple angle cut, I'm going to set aside for the top middle and the top right hand corner piece. I'm going to set that aside so that I can cut it together with the set that it goes with. So one of these will be whole as the background piece for 5B. But the other one will cut for 6, A and B, at 2 inches, so right down the middle. All right, for our skinny bottom cuts, first I'll go ahead and I'll cut off a 1/2 inch strip. And then split that in half at 4 inches. Double checking to make sure that I'm not losing them. And those are pieces for 5. All right, and then on the 1-inch piece, we have to do some fancy cutting here. First, we need to cut off our 5 1/4 pieces. And then we can split those in half at 1/2 inch. And those are the ribbons for card 5. And I'll cut off the 1/4 inch bow centers. Those are the knots for my bow. And I'll set those aside. Anything that says bow template or for the bow, I'm going to go ahead and set it aside, and I will do those bows before I move on to the card making. But you don't have to. You could put them in the bag with everything else at the same time. It doesn't matter. And then I'll cut off my last piece at 1/5/8 by 1. Got a lot of little pieces here. So I'm going to start bagging them up. You can see some of these you can still flip around. Like that one I did flip because it had no masking tape on it. And honestly, even if it does have the masking tape on it, usually you can pull that off pretty easily and put it the other direction if you wanted to. So for the left-hand side piece, I'm going to cut off those bow template pieces first, and again I'm going to set those aside from my bow, and they'll be 1 inch by 4 inches. And then I'm going to continue working my way up. I need 2 7/8 by 1 5/8. So I'm going to cut that at 2 7/8, which is just 1/8 shy of 3. And then I'll flip that around and do 1 5/8, which is just a little more than 1 1/2. So on this one, I'll do my 2 7/8 and then my 1 inch. Get rid of my little excess strip. And then cut these at 1 5/8, which is again just a little bit more than 1 1/2. 1/8 past 1 1/2. And again, this strip here will again be 1 by 1 5/8 pieces, so I'll just start cutting these at 1 5/8. And I'll have a tiny piece of scrap left over. These in their bags as well. This piece, designer paper 3, will end up giving you pieces for cards 2, 3, 5, and 6. So again, I folded that in half so I cannot see the green piece and confuse myself. And on this one, we're going to do a little differently. That green line is not at the 4-inch or the 8-inch line. It is on the bottom. At 1 inch. Although you could also cut off the 4 on this one too. Either one could be your green line. So I went ahead and I did cut this, I believe, at the 4. Nope, I didn't. I cut it at 11. Which means I'll have my 1 inch piece on the other side. And now that that's done, I can cut at 4 all the way across this now. Alright, so again I'm going to do those top 2 pieces at 5 1/4. And then I'll need to make another cut on the bottom pieces at 1/2 inch to make the other ones 5 1/4 also. So for the triple angle cut pieces, again I'm going to lay those to the side and I'll do them all at one time. then one of these pieces again will be a whole piece for the background of the present card number 5. And the other one will cut down at 2, which is incidentally right down the middle of those 2 patterns, which wasn't intentional, but sometimes it happens. I'll go ahead and put those pieces where they go, that way I'm not getting confused on which pieces I'm doing. Alright, so on the bottom piece, first I'm going to go ahead and cut that at 5 1/4. And then split that in half at 1/2 inch. Go ahead and do my 1/4 inch pieces for my bow knot. And then my 1 inch piece. And or I should say my 1 by 4 inch piece and my 1 by 1 5/8 inch piece. Bow template I'm going to set aside, and I'll put the other pieces where they go. These cuts are fairly easy. We're going to cut 4 by 4 twice, and then cut the rest of it into 1 inches or 1 inch slices. And try not to get confused because you already have one 1 inch slice that you took out from the bottom. Those where they go. So in designer paper 4, you have pieces for cards 2, 5, 6, and 7. And 1 piece for card 3. Moving on to the final piece, designer paper 5, which is yellow in the template. And all I'm doing here on this one is I'm trying to decide where I want these holes to be. And it's really starting to irk me about these papers not being quite 6 by 6. doing Kendra's card challenges with Echo Park papers. I mean, I love Echo Park papers so much, but it makes me so angry that they are not true 6x6s. I don't understand why they do that. I have noticed that some of them are better than others, but almost every one that I've gotten lately is like this. It's not a true 6x6. And it's not just my trimmer. I have tried it on different trimmers to make sure, and I've measured it with an actual ruler. It's not my trimmer, it's the paper itself. And I don't know if it's just certain packs are getting their holes punched in the wrong spots, maybe? I don't know. So again, on this one, I'll cut 1.5 inches off the bottom first. And then I'll work with my top slices. And again, these I can do at 4 all the way across, so 4 and 4 again. Then I'll cut it at 5 1/4. And again, I'm just deciding which pieces I want the whole to be on, but I don't care. And I'm thinking I'll do it on the present cards, on the gift looking cards, because I'm going to end up putting the ribbon part of that over the whole. All fixed. No one knows there's a hole. So I'll cut the bottom strip at 3 inches apiece, and those will be for card 1. And then the right hand strip. Again, I'm deciding where I want these holes to go. It's very annoying. I really wish they'd fix their paper pads. I really, really, really love Echo Park. I really wish they would fix the problem with the holes on their 6x6 pads. So I just cut that at 2 at 4x4 and 2 at 4x1. And those will all be for cards 7. So here's where I kept my bow pieces. I kind of kept them in the paperback so I wouldn't lose them. And here I'm just folding up 2 at a time and placing my already cut out bow template on top of that. And then with a good pair of scissors, just cut around that template. And these don't have to be perfect, so don't stress. Just make sure you have really good scissors, especially if you're doing 2 at a time, because that's going to mean you're cutting through 4 pieces of good paper. And then to make the bow piece, you just want to break down that paper a little bit. I use a pencil. And then just apply a little bit of glue to the centers and the ends. And then hold that down. And then apply glue to the knot piece and wrap it around. And then you'll need to hold it a little bit until that glue can kind of set up. And then that's it. You have a really cute little bow. Alright, I'm gonna cut this video short. I'm not gonna do too much more after this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was easy to follow. I hope you'll craft along with me, but I am gonna go ahead and split this up in between the cutting versus the putting together or the crafting of the cards. So I'll end up making 2 videos for this because this has gotten so long and I don't want to bore you guys with too much. So I'll go ahead and put this one out today and possibly the next one tomorrow. If not today also, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I really hope you give it a try. This turned out so much better than I could have planned. You know, I love the idea of quilt cards and patchwork cards, and these just turned out so great. So I really hope you'll give it a try. And if you do, tag me on social media, show me on Facebook. Hope you had a good time. Y'all stay safe and have a great week. Thanks. Like, subscribe, share. Every little bit helps. Thanks again.